In the dim flicker of a single street lamp, rain-slicked cobblestones gleaming like shattered promises, Elena huddled against the cold brick wall of the abandoned cafe. Her threadbare coat clung to her shivering frame, and tears mingled with the downpour on her cheeks. A crumpled photo slipped from her numb fingers, her mother's faded smile, the only anchor in a sea of loss. "I don't deserve love," she whispered to the empty night, her voice cracking like fragile glass. But then, from the shadows, a figure emerged, not with pity's cruel gaze, but with eyes brimming with silent, shared sorrow. A stranger, coat unbuttoned against the storm, knelt before her, and as their hands touched, a single tear traced his weathered face. In that instant, the world held its breath, for in his unspoken grief, Elena glimpsed her own unspoken worth. Elena's world had unraveled thread by thread, leaving her adrift in a tapestry of quiet desperation. At 32, she carried the weight of abandonment like a stone in her chest, her father vanishing when she was 6, her mother succumbing to cancer 5 years ago, and now, the eviction notice that had stripped her of the tiny apartment that once echoed with her mother's lullabies. Poverty wasn't just a lack of money. It was the gnawing void where security should be, the skipped meals rationalized as saving for tomorrow, the isolation that wrapped around her like fog, making every stranger's glance feel like judgment. She worked odd jobs, cleaning offices at dawn, tutoring neighborhood kids for pennies, but it was never enough. The grief festered, whispering lies in the dead of night. Asterisk, you're broken. Unlovable. A burden no one wants. Asterisk. That rainy October evening in the forgotten corner of downtown Seattle, Elena had sought refuge in the alley behind the old Café Lumière, a place her mother had loved for its buttery croissants and the way the steam from coffee cups fogged the windows like secrets. Now shuttered, its faded sign creaked in the wind, a mocking reminder of warmer days. She clutched the photo tighter, tracing the lines of her mother's face, the woman who had taught her to plant tulips in cracked pots and believe in second chances. But second chances felt like fairy tales for women like Elena, women with calloused hands and eyes shadowed by too many unshed tears. The stranger appeared like a ghost from the mist. He was in his late 40s, perhaps, with salt and pepper hair plastered to his forehead, and a wool overcoat that smelled faintly of pipe tobacco and regret. His name, she would learn later, was Marcus, but in that moment, he was just a silhouette against the storm. He didn't speak at first. Words seemed too heavy for the downpour. Instead, he shrugged off his coat and draped it over her shoulders, the fabric warm from his body heat, enveloping her in an unexpected cocoon of kindness. Elena flinched, instincts honed by years of fending off pitying offers that came with strings. "What do you want?" she murmured, her voice laced with suspicion, the photo crumpling further in her fist. Marcus knelt, rain pooling around his knees, and met her gaze, not with the averted eyes of discomfort, but with a raw vulnerability that pierced her defenses. "Nothing," he said softly, his voice rough like gravel under tires. "I saw you from across the street. The way you held that picture, it reminded me of someone." He paused, swallowing hard, and that's when the tear fell, not a dramatic sob, but a quiet rivulet that carved a path down his cheek, mingling with the rain. Elena's breath caught. Strangers didn't cry for her. They hurried past, umbrellas shielding them from her reality. In the shelter of his coat, she felt the first crack in her armor. "My mom," she whispered, the words tumbling out unbidden. "She died. And now, everything's gone. The apartment, the job, it's all slipping away. I keep thinking, maybe if I was better, stronger, maybe she'd still be here. Maybe someone would care." The confession hung between them, heavy as the clouds above. Marcus nodded, not interrupting, his own eyes distant, as if pulling memories from a locked drawer. "I lost my wife 3 years ago," he finally said. "Car accident. Left me with a daughter who barely speaks to me anymore. Grief, it makes us forget we're not alone in it." He reached into his satchel, a worn leather bag that spoke of long journeys, and pulled out a thermos, steaming with hot chocolate laced with marshmallows. "Here. It's not much, but it's warm. And there's a cafe 2 blocks over, still open late. Let me buy you a real meal. No strings. Just company on a night like this." Elena's heart warred within her, pride screaming to refuse, isolation urging her to flee, but the warmth seeping through the coat whispered of possibility. She nodded, tentative, and they rose together, his hand steady under her elbow. The walk to the cafe was a symphony of pattering rain and shared silence, broken only by snippets of stories. Marcus spoke of his daughter, Lila, whose anger at the world masked a fear of loving again. Elena shared fragments of her mother's recipes, the way laughter had once filled their kitchen despite the unpaid bills. By the time they reached the glowing windows of Haven's Brew, the storm felt less like a siege and more like a veil lifting. Inside, the air hummed with the scent of fresh bread and espresso, a stark contrast to the alley's chill. Marcus ordered soup for her, black coffee for him, and they claimed a corner booth, the vinyl seats cracked but comforting. As Elena spooned the creamy tomato bisque, savoring the first real nourishment in days, Marcus listened without judgment. "You deserve more than survival," he said when she confessed her whisper to the night. "Love isn't earned, it's discovered, like finding a lighthouse in the fog." His words landed softly, but they stirred something deep, a flicker of hope amid the embers of doubt. That night stretched into the early hours, their conversation weaving through layers of pain. Elena spoke of the isolation that had become her companion, the social worker's pitying calls she ignored, the friends who drifted away when her grief turned inward. Marcus shared his own isolation, the empty house echoing with ghosts, the colleagues who offered condolences but no real connection. Yet in this unlikely pairing, vulnerability bridged the gap. When the cafe closed, Marcus pressed a 20 into her hand. Not charity, he insisted, but seed money for tomorrow's coffee. And with it, his number scribbled on a napkin. "If the rain comes again, call. Storms are better shared." As Elena trudged to the shelter that night, the coat still around her shoulders, she felt lighter, as if the stranger's tear had washed away a layer of grime from her soul. It was a small act, a coat, a meal, a listening ear, but it planted a seed. For the first time in months, she didn't whisper her unworthiness to the dark. Instead, she dreamed of tulips blooming in cracked pots, their petals unfurling toward an unseen sun. Weeks blurred into a fragile rhythm for Elena, the stranger's kindness a quiet undercurrent reshaping her days. Marcus's coat became her talisman, returned washed and folded with a thank you note, but his words lingered like the aftertaste of hot chocolate, sweet, sustaining. She texted him sporadically at first, hesitant probes into this new territory of connection. * rainy day here. How's Lila? * his replies were steady anchors. * she's drawing again. And you? Found any good croissants? * poverty still clawed at her edges. The shelter's thin mattress, the job hunt's endless rejections. But now, there were glimmers. Using that 20, she bought a bus pass and applied for a barista position at Haven's Brew, the very cafe where their paths had crossed. Full circle, she murmured to her reflection, practicing a smile that felt foreign yet genuine. The interview was a leap of faith. Elena arrived early, her mother's photo tucked in her pocket like a charm, nerves twisting her stomach. The manager, a no-nonsense woman named Rita with laugh lines etched deep, eyed her resume, sparse, dotted with gaps. "Life's thrown you curveballs, huh?" Rita said, not unkindly. Elena nodded, throat tight. "Lost my mom. Lost my home. But I'm ready to build something." Rita leaned back, tapping her pen. "We all lose pieces. It's what you do with the rest that counts. You're hired, start Monday." Tears pricked Elena's eyes, unbidden, and she texted Marcus from the bus stop. * got the job. "Your 20 bought more than coffee. * his response. * knew it. "Celebrate with me? Dinner Friday. * That dinner marked the deepening of their bond, a life-changing connection forged not in grand gestures, but in the quiet alchemy of shared humanity. Marcus chose a modest Italian bistro, far from fancy, where candlelight danced on checkered tablecloths. Lila joined them, a 14-year-old with her father's eyes but a guarded heart, her sketchbook clutched like a shield. At first, tension hummed, Lila's sullen glances, Elena's fear of intruding. But as plates of pasta arrived, steaming with garlic and basil, stories flowed. Elena shared her mother's tale of resilience. A single mom who juggled night shifts and night school, teaching Elena that love was a verb, not a noun. She'd say, "Plant your feet. Mihija, and let the roots find their way. Lila's walls cracked when Elena pulled out a pencil and napkin, sketching a simple tulip from memory. My mom loved these. Said they remind us beauty pushes through concrete. Lila's fingers itched. She took the pencil, adding fierce strokes. A garden exploding with color. Dad never lets me draw at dinner, she muttered, but her eyes softened. Marcus watched, his own grief easing in the glow of this makeshift family. Over tiramisu, confessions deepened. He admitted his isolation had widened the chasm with Lila, his workaholic days a numb escape from widowhood. I forgot how to connect, he said, voice thick. Elena reached across, her hand covering his. You remembered that night in the rain. That's enough to start. As autumn deepened, their lives intertwined like vines. Elena's shifts at Haven's Brew brought stability, a paycheck, a routine, even Rita's gruff mentorship. She saved for a studio apartment, tiny but hers, planting tulips in a window box that caught the winter sun. Marcus became her confidant, their weekly walks through Pike Place Market a ritual of laughter and lingering glances. Elena knelt before the girl, heart aching with recognition. I won't pretend. I know what it feels like to think love's a lie. My dad left when I was little, and part of me still whispers I drove him away. But your dad? He sees you, Lila. And so do I. Tears welled, not hers this time, but Lila's, spilling over as she collapsed into Elena's arms. Marcus joined, his embrace enveloping them both, a circle of raw, healing vulnerability. In that moment, kindness circled back unexpectedly, not as repayment, but as reciprocity. Elena realized Marcus's initial act had been his own cry for connection, his tear a mirror to her pain. Now, she was the lighthouse for him and Lila, her small generosities, listening, sketching, loving without condition, mending fractures she hadn't known she could touch. Spring arrived with tentative warmth, tulips unfurling in Elena's window like promises kept. On a sunlit afternoon, Marcus proposed not with rings, but with a shared vision, a home for three, roots entwined. You taught me love isn't deserved. It's chosen, he said, his eyes, once shadowed, now bright. Elena, no longer whispering unworthiness, chose back. Their wedding was simple, Rita officiating in the cafe, Lila scattering petals, the air alive with the scent of fresh croissants. As vows exchanged, Elena glanced at her mother's photo on the mantel, feeling not absence, but presence, a legacy of empathy passed forward. In the years that followed, Elena's life transformed. A family, a community garden where she taught isolated neighbors to plant hope, a book of her mother's recipes shared with Lila's school. The stranger's tears had been the spark, her returned kindness, the flame. Struggles lingered, grief's echoes, poverty's scars, but they faced them woven together, each act of compassion a thread strengthening the whole. In the quiet symphony of human hearts, where shadows of doubt meet the dawn of understanding, remember this. A single tear shed in solidarity can illuminate the worth we all too often hide, proving that love is not a scarce gift, but an infinite echo, rippling outward to heal the world one whispered truth at a time. Moral of the story. In the fragile dance of broken souls, one act of unearned kindness can shatter the chains of self-doubt, revealing that love's true measure lies not in what we deserve, but in the courage to offer it freely.